Almost there, my love. 6 months after the mountain trip, we will be free. The words glowed on the screen of the phone I held in my trembling hands. It was not my phone. It belonged to Vincent, the man who in less than 10 minutes would become the husband of my daughter, Emily. The man who had just handed her his cell phone saying, "Babe, hold on to this for me while I go up to the altar," and she, nervous in her beautiful white dress, had passed it on to me. "Mom, you hold it for me, please. I have nowhere to put it." My name is Susan. I am 58 years old. I have been a widow for 7 years, a mother to 2 extraordinary daughters, and right now, sitting in the front row of St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, I have just discovered that the perfect man my youngest daughter is about to marry is planning to murder her. The phone vibrated in my purse just 10 minutes ago. The screen lit up, showing the full notification. Vincent had his settings configured so that messages would show without needing to unlock the device. I saw the name My Love right next to a red heart. I saw the first lines of the message, and my world completely fell apart. My heart started to beat out of control. Why was another woman calling him my love? Why was she talking about being free? With hands I could barely control, I tried to unlock the phone. To my surprise, he did not have a passcode activated. Vincent was one of those overly confident people who never put security on their devices, or maybe he was just so arrogant that he never imagined getting caught. The screen opened right up. I scrolled up through the conversation for previous messages, and the words made my blood run cold. The plan is still on. The rock climbing excursion will be perfect. Nobody is going to question a thing. The life insurance pays out automatically. And further up, $5 million, more than enough for the loan sharks and for us. A new life, a new country. I looked up, trembling. My daughter was walking down the center aisle on the arm of her godfather, my older brother, Jack. Emily looked absolutely radiant in the white lace dress we had picked out together 3 months ago at that upscale boutique on Fifth Avenue. Her veil floated behind her like an ethereal cloud. Her smile was the most beautiful one I had seen on her in years. Pure happiness, genuine love shining in every single feature of her face. And I, her mother, the woman who had carried her in my womb for 9 months, who had nursed her, who had watched over her during feverish nights, who had worked double shifts at the hospital to pay for her college tuition, was holding in my hands the absolute proof that the man waiting for her at the altar had already planned her death. I cannot breathe. The air in this historic Gothic cathedral with its soaring high ceilings and centuries-old stained glass windows suddenly feels insufficient. I look around at the 200 guests, all elegantly dressed, all smiling, all completely oblivious to the horror I'm holding in my hands. The white flowers decorating every pew, the orchids that Emily loved so much, the scent of incense mixing with the expensive perfumes of the guests. Everything so perfect, everything so normal, everything so terribly fake. I keep reading. My fingers move on their own across the screen, scrolling down, searching, needing to know more, even though every single word feels like a knife plunging into my chest. "And are you sure she signed it?" Vincent wrote that a week ago. The reply from my love was, "I forged it for her. My handwriting is very similar, and the document is already processed." My breathing stops completely. What document? What has he signed in my daughter's name? I feel like I am going to pass out right here in front of everyone, but I cannot because Emily keeps walking toward the altar. Every step brings her closer to her future killer, and I only have minutes left, maybe less than 5 minutes, before she says the words, "I do," and it becomes far too late. My eyes automatically search for Sarah, my oldest daughter, who is sitting on the other side of the center aisle with her husband David, and my 2 little grandchildren, Matthew, who is 7, and Isabella, who is 5. Sarah knows me better than anyone else in this world. We raised our family in the historic suburbs in that beautiful house with a large backyard that my late husband Richard and I bought when we were young and full of dreams. Sarah has always been able to read my face like an open book, and right now she must have seen something in my expression. Something in the way my posture went rigid in my seat, in how my knuckles turned stark white from gripping the phone, in how my breathing became shallow and rapid, because she immediately frowns and looks at me with deep concern. I make an almost imperceptible nod of my head, a desperate call, a silent plea. Come here. I need you to come here right now. Sarah does not hesitate for a single second. She gets up immediately, leaving the children with David. She approaches discreetly down the side aisle while the guests continue to converse in low voices, completely oblivious to the horror I am holding in my hands. She is wearing an elegant and understated navy blue dress, her brown hair pulled back into a perfect bun. My two daughters are so wildly different. Emily is impulsive and romantic, while Sarah is practical and analytical. And right now, I need Sarah's cold logic more than I ever have. Mom, what is wrong? You look completely pale, Sarah whispers as she reaches my side, kneeling right next to my seat. Her eyes scan my face, desperately searching for answers. I see in them the exact same worry I saw when her father died 7 years ago, when we got that horrible call from the hospital saying Richard had suffered a massive heart attack in his office and they had not been able to save him. That same expression of deep fear and the primal need to protect that defines my eldest daughter. I cannot speak. My throat is closed tight by the panic, by the horror, by the impossible weight of what I have just discovered. I simply hand her the cell phone with hands that will not stop trembling. Sarah looks at the screen and begins to read. I watch how her expression changes second by second. First confusion slightly wrinkling her forehead as she tries to understand what she is looking at, then disbelief. Her eyes open wider. Her mouth parts slightly, and finally absolute horror sets in. She covers her mouth with her hand to stop herself from screaming. "Oh my God, Mom," she murmurs with a broken voice, looking at me with wide eyes full of tears that threaten to spill over. This is a plan to kill her. I nod entirely, unable to articulate a single word. The tears finally roll down my cheeks, ruining the makeup that took me an hour to apply this morning. But I do not care. Nothing matters except that my baby, my Emily, is walking straight toward her death, and I have to stop her. But how do you tell your daughter on her wedding day in front of 200 people that the man she loves, the man with whom she has planned to build a family, the man who has promised her eternal love, is planning to murder her for money? I look toward the altar. The organ keeps playing that wedding march that should be beautiful, but now it sounds like a requiem. Emily is halfway down the aisle. She smiles at the guests who are crying tears of joy. She nods in greeting. She is the perfect image of the happy bride, completely unaware that every single step brings her closer to her executioner. Sarah, always so practical, always so efficient, takes Vincent's cell phone and pulls out her own phone. "Mom, we need evidence," she whispers with urgent intensity in my ear. "If we only show her this, he will just deny it. He will say that you manipulated it, that you are making things up because you never liked him. We need a backup." She is right. Oh my God, my daughter is right. Because that has always been the problem with Vincent. I never trusted him. From the very first moment Emily brought him home 11 months ago, I felt that something was terribly wrong. I could not pinpoint exactly what it was, but my maternal instinct, that radar that mothers develop the second our children are born, was screaming loud alarms. And Emily knew it. She knew it, and she threw it in my face time and time again. "Mom, you always do this. You always find something wrong with any man I date. Vincent loves me. He does not care about your money. You are just making things up because you cannot stand the thought of me being happy without you." Those were her exact words 6 months ago when I showed her the report from the private investigator I hired. The report that detailed Vincent's massive debts, his 3 failed businesses, and the lawsuits that he had somehow managed to evade. Emily exploded. She threatened to cut me out of her life entirely if I kept sabotaging her happiness. And I, like the coward that I was, gave in. I stopped investigating. I stayed quiet. I swallowed every single instinct that told me this man was dangerous, just so I would not lose my daughter. And now, here we are. Sarah's fingers fly across the screen of Vincent's phone, photographing every single incriminating message. The conversations about the rock climbing trip, the specific plans, the mentions of money. It takes 3 full minutes. 3 minutes that feel like agonizing hours while I can only sit there paralyzed, feeling my entire world crumble around me. "Mom, there is more," Sarah whispers, with a choked voice never stopping her photography. Weeks of conversations, specific plans. They talk about the honeymoon, about a rock climbing excursion in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado. She stops. She reads something else, and her face loses whatever color it had left. He says he is going to cut the rope when they are alone, that nobody will suspect a thing, that mountain accidents are very common. I feel the air leave my lungs completely. I cannot process this. I cannot accept that this level of pure evil actually exists, that someone could so coldly plan the murder of a person who completely trusts him, who loves him with all her heart. Sarah keeps documenting everything with the ruthless efficiency of the accountant she is. There is a life insurance policy, $5 million. Here is the photo of the document. She shows me the screen as she takes the picture, and right there is an official document from a major national life insurance company. The insured person is Emily, the beneficiary in case of death is Vincent as her husband. My daughter's signature is right down there on the dotted line, but I know Emily's signature just as well as I know my own face in the mirror. I have seen it on thousands of documents, her birth certificate, her college degree, her master's in marketing, the paperwork when she bought her trendy downtown loft with the inheritance her father left her. That signature is completely fake. She forged her signature, Sarah whispers, confirming my darkest thoughts. This is dated 2 weeks ago. She keeps documenting, and then she finds something that freezes my blood even more, if that is even possible. Pictures. Intimate photos of Vincent with another woman. A young woman with long black hair and a perfect smile taking selfies with Vincent in what looks to be a luxurious, high-rise apartment. The photos have date metadata from 3 days ago, 3 days before this wedding, 3 days before Vincent was supposed to promise my daughter his eternal love. Sarah photographs all of them. She does not say a word, but I see how tightly she clenches her jaw. My eldest daughter is incredibly strong. She always has been. But this is breaking her just as much as it is breaking me. Then she finds the message that takes this entire nightmare to a completely new level. A message from Vincent sent 2 weeks ago talking to my love. Lucy was much easier. This one is smarter, but she trusts me way too much. That is her biggest mistake. Who is Lucy? Sarah finishes sending all the screenshots to her email and to David's. If anything happens, you have the proof. She quickly texts her husband. They are in your email. Check it right now. Just as Sarah puts her phone away, the organ music shifts. The main wedding march begins to play that beautiful melody every bride dreams of hearing. At that exact moment, the massive wooden doors of the cathedral that had remained shut suddenly swing wide open, and all 200 guests rise to their feet. My heart lurches so violently that I think I'm going to pass out right there. The bridal chorus fills the sacred space with its beautiful and terrible melody, and there she is, my Emily, my baby, the little girl I carried in my womb through 9 difficult months of pregnancy. The tiny baby who was born premature and spent her first few weeks in an incubator while I prayed day and night for her to survive. The toddler who took her first steps in the backyard of our house in the suburbs, the teenager who cried in my arms when her heart was broken, the brilliant woman who became my greatest pride, working as a marketing manager at a multinational company at 27 years old. She looks radiant in her wedding dress, the mermaid cut, that she loves so much. The French lace we specially imported, the 10-foot veil that belonged to Grandma Hope. The bouquet of white roses and gardenias trembles slightly in her hands because she is nervous and excited and happy. So incredibly happy. Her smile is the most beautiful I have seen in years. She walks on the arm of my brother Jack, who looks at her with such profound pride and tenderness. My brother, the former police commander, the most protective man I know, handing over his favorite niece to the very man who is actively planning to murder her. Emily moves down that aisle carpeted in white petals, without knowing absolutely anything, without having the slightest idea that the man waiting for her at the altar, the man to whom she is about to swear eternal love, the man with whom she plans to have children and grow old, has already calculated exactly how much time he needs to stay married to her before he kills her. 6 months. 6 months is all he has granted my daughter before he cuts her rope on some remote mountain in Colorado. My eyes drift toward the altar. Vincent is standing there in his impeccable black suit, a silk pocket square in his jacket, his dark hair perfectly slicked back with gel, flashing that charming smile that won my daughter over less than a year ago. He looks perfect, handsome, deeply moved. The exact image of the groom in love waiting for his future wife. He is 32 years old, 5 years older than Emily. He works in finance, or so he claims. He comes from Chicago, from a very well-off family, according to his own words. He speaks 3 languages, knows everything about fine wines, knows the best restaurants in the city, and is endlessly charming to everyone. Emily's friends absolutely adore him. My own friends kept telling me he was an excellent catch, but I knew. I always knew there was something rotten hiding behind that perfect smile. I knew it from the very first family dinner, when his eyes scanned my living room, evaluating every piece of furniture, every painting, every valuable object. I knew it when he started asking seemingly casual questions. Is this house fully paid off, Susan? How long ago did you buy the properties in the historic district? They have gone up a lot in value, right? Questions about investments, about inheritance plans, about exactly how much my late husband had left behind. Everything was wrapped up in friendly conversation, but it carried a specific weight that gave me goosebumps. And now I know the ugly truth. Behind that mask of love is a calculating predator who has already planned every single detail of my daughter's murder. A predator who has apparently done this before with someone named Lucy, who was much easier. Sarah is still right beside me. Vincent's cell phone in one hand, her own phone in the other, with all the evidence backed up across 3 different email accounts. She looks at me, and I see in her eyes the exact same absolute terror that I feel. "Mom," she whispers with a tense but firm voice, "we have less than 3 minutes before the I do. If we are going to do something, it has to be right now." She is right. My practical daughter. My logical daughter. My daughter, who always sees things clearly, is absolutely right. But my mind is completely paralyzed by panic and by an impossible question. How do you tell your daughter on her wedding day in front of 200 people that the man she loves is planning to murder her? How do you destroy her happiness, her dream, her entire future in one single moment? But the alternative is infinitely worse. If I do nothing, if I let this wedding continue in 6 months, I will be picking out the casket where I will bury my daughter. I will be standing in front of a grave instead of playing with my future grandchildren. I will be living the rest of my life knowing that I had the chance to save her and I chose not to do it. Emily reaches the end of the aisle. My brother Jack kisses her forehead with infinite tenderness and places her hand right into Vincent's hand. The mere sight of their hands touching gives me physical nausea. I have to physically restrain myself from screaming from running up there and ripping my daughter away from his side. Vincent smiles at Emily with that perfect grin he has practiced in the mirror 1,000 times. She returns a smile full of pure love and absolute trust, a trust that he is going to betray in the most horrific way imaginable. Father Alexander, the priest who baptized Emily 27 years ago, who gave her her first communion, who's been a part of our family for decades, opens his ceremonial book and begins to speak with a deeply solemn voice. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the presence of God and this community. His voice echoes off the stone walls of the cathedral. Every single word feels like the ticking of a countdown clock. Every second that passes brings us closer to the moment when it will be too late. I have to act right now. But a voice in my head, the voice of doubt, the voice of fear, screams all the reasons why this could go terribly wrong. What if she does not believe me? What if she thinks I am making everything up because I never accepted Vincent? What if Vincent manages to convince her that the messages are totally fake, that I somehow manipulated them? Everyone knows I never liked this man. From day one, I felt something was off. I told my family, and she called me jealous, controlling, completely incapable of letting her be happy. We had the worst fight of our entire lives 6 months ago. "You always do this, Mom," she screamed at me with a furious rage I had never seen from her before. "You always find something wrong with any man I date. You know what, I am sick of this. If you keep doing this, I am going to walk away from you forever." She threatened to cut me out of her life entirely if I kept sabotaging her happiness. I cried for days after that fight. I talked to Sarah, who also had her doubts about Vincent, but Sarah told me something that broke my heart. "Mom, if you push her any harder, you are going to lose her. You know Emily. The more you tell her no, the harder she will cling to him. If you want to keep her in your life, you have to stay quiet and trust that she will eventually see the truth for herself." So I stayed quiet. After that terrible fight, I fired the private investigator. I had already spent $10,000 on his research, and the information he found only made my relationship with my daughter worse. I swallowed every single instinct, screaming that this man was dangerous, just to avoid losing Emily. And right now, if I interrupt this wedding, Vincent could use all of that against me. He could paint me as the bitter, controlling mother who invented an elaborate scheme to ruin her own daughter's wedding. He could say I hacked his phone, that I forged fake text messages, that I am just desperate to maintain control over Emily. And she might actually believe him because she has accused me of similar things before, because she has already chosen to believe him over me. But then I remember that one message. Lucy was much easier. He has absolutely done this before. It is not my paranoia. It is not an invention. It is incredibly real. There is, or was, another woman named Lucy, who was apparently a victim of this monster too, and I have Sarah as a witness. My analytical accountant daughter, highly respected at her firm, a mother of 2, a woman so firmly grounded in reality that nobody could ever accuse her of being dramatic or making up crazy stories. She has seen the messages. She has created the digital backup. I am not alone in this. But as those thoughts flash through my mind like lightning, my eyes remain locked on Emily standing right next to Vincent at the altar, my baby, my daughter. The little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms looking for protection. The teenager who cried in my arms when her friends betrayed her. The woman who became my ultimate pride when she graduated from college with honors. And I knew, with absolute piercing clarity, that cut through all the fear and the doubt, that it did not matter what happened next. It did not matter if she hated me for the rest of her life. It did not matter if she never forgave me. It did not matter if I became the ultimate villain in her story. I had to save her, even if it meant completely destroying her happiness, even if it meant becoming the enemy. Because in 6 months, when Vincent executed his perfectly calculated plan, I would not be here comforting her after a ruined wedding. I would be picking out flowers for her funeral. I would be writing her obituary. I would be lowering a casket into the ground. And that terrifying possibility, that horrific image of my dead daughter, was the thing that finally broke my paralysis. I stand up with legs that can barely support my weight. The movement is so abrupt that several guests sitting nearby turn to look at me with shocked expressions. You simply do not stand up in the middle of a wedding ceremony. It just is not done. But I can no longer think about social rules, about decorum, or about what people will say. I can only think about my daughter and the very few minutes I have left to save her life. Sarah stands up right next to me, immediately holding the cell phone with the hard evidence of the murder plot. We start walking toward the altar. Every step feels like I am walking through thick mud. The entire world has become unreal, as if I am trapped in a nightmare from which I cannot wake up. The murmurs begin to fill the cathedral. The closest guests look at us in utter confusion. I hear the whispers. What is the mother of the bride doing? Where is she going? Is something wrong? But I can only focus on putting one foot in front of the other, on staying upright when my legs desperately want to collapse under the crushing weight of what I'm about to do. Father Alexander sees us approaching and frowns, stopping his reading mid-sentence. Emily turns around and her expression of pure happiness slowly morphs into deep confusion. Vincent sees us too, and right there in that microsecond, I see something flash across his face. It was just an instant, a tiny micro-expression that probably nobody else even noticed, but I saw it clearly. Panic. His eyes darted directly to the cell phone in Sarah's hand. His perfect smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He knows. In that exact instant, Vincent Miller knew that we had seen something on his phone, and in that same instant, I also knew with absolute certainty that every single word in those text messages was true. "Mom, what are you doing?" Emily asks with a bewildered voice as I reach her side. I can see the deep confusion in her brown eyes, the exact same eyes as her father. I can see how irritation starts to mix with perplexity. She probably thinks I am going to cause a massive scene to say something highly inappropriate about Vincent to fulfill her absolute worst fears, that I will ruin her perfect day. The ceremony is starting. Is something wrong? Her voice has that touch of exasperation that I know so well, the exact same tone she used to use as a teenager when I asked her about her homework or her friends. All 200 guests are completely silent now. The silence in this cathedral is so absolute that I can clearly hear my own accelerated breathing. I can hear the rustling of my silk dress against the marble floor. I can hear the frantic, hammering beats of my own heart. I take a deep breath. My hands are shaking so badly that I have to clench my fists tightly just to control them. I feel my fingernails digging deeply into my palms. The physical pain helps keep me grounded in this impossible moment. Emily, sweetie. I say with a voice I barely recognize as my own. It sounds broken, desperate, and ancient. I need to show you something right now before you say I do. Vincent steps forward immediately with that charming smile still completely intact, although I can now see the rigid tension in his jaw muscles. His voice is smooth, highly reasonable, and perfectly modulated. Susan, with all due respect, this is not the appropriate time. The ceremony is about to begin. If there is something you want to discuss, we can certainly do it after. But Sarah does not let him finish his sentence. My eldest daughter, always so diplomatic and so calm, steps forward with her eyes blazing with pure fury, a fury I have never seen in her before. Not even when her husband David lost his job 3 years ago. Not even when Isabella was in the hospital with severe pneumonia. This is a cold, highly controlled, utterly lethal fury. "It absolutely is the right time, Vincent," she says with a firmness that echoes loudly throughout the entire cathedral. "And you had better shut your mouth right now." Several guests gasp audibly at the sheer harshness of her words. In a traditional church wedding in the grand historic cathedral, this is practically sacrilege. But Sarah does not back down. She stands incredibly firm, holding Vincent's cell phone in one hand and her own phone in the other. Father Alexander steps in, clearly uncomfortable adjusting his glasses with trembling hands. "Susan, Sarah, please. If there is any objection, it must be presented in an appropriate manner and with incredibly valid reasons. We cannot simply—" "I have extremely valid reasons, Father." I interrupt him, looking him straight in the eyes. Father Alexander has known me for 30 years. He baptized both of my daughters. He stood by my side at my husband's funeral. He has seen me in my best and absolute worst moments. Reasons that directly involve my daughter's life. The silence that follows is so incredibly profound that it could be cut with a knife. I can feel the heavy weight of 200 stares pressing down on me. I can see the raw expressions of shock on the faces of all the guests. My brother Jack, who has stepped back a few paces from the altar, looks at me with narrowed eyes, his police instincts clearly fully activated. Emily looks at me with a volatile mix of deep confusion and rapidly growing anger. "Mom, what are you talking about? What is this?" I raise the cell phone I'm still holding tightly. "This is Vincent's phone. You handed it to me to hold onto when he walked up to the altar." Emily stares at the phone, clearly not understanding yet. I can see on her face that she is desperately trying to figure out what her future husband's phone has to do with completely stopping her wedding. She is waiting for an explanation, praying for me to say something that makes sense, something that will not turn this beautiful day into an absolute nightmare. But there is no gentle way to do this. There are no soft words for what I have to show her. Sarah takes a step forward, placing herself right next to her sister. "Sis," she says with a soft but intensely urgent voice, "you need to read what is on that phone, right now." She hands the cell phone over to Emily with very steady hands. Emily takes it, still deeply confused, still entirely oblivious to the truth. I search for the specific messages, the ones that condemn absolutely everything. My fingers know the exact path now, after having read them a dozen times in the last few minutes. I find the chat thread with "my love," and I show the glowing screen to my daughter. "Read it," I tell her simply. And Emily begins to read. I watch her face closely as she reads. It is exactly like watching a sheet of glass shatter in extreme slow motion. First there is deep confusion as her eyes scan the very first lines. Her forehead wrinkles. She moves her lips, silently rereading desperately, trying to process what she is actually seeing. The plan is still on. The rock climbing excursion will be perfect, equipment checked, route selected, timing calculated. Then I watch as utter disbelief takes over her features. She blinks rapidly as if she could magically change the words on the screen simply by wishing they were not there. Her hands begin to tremble violently as she holds the phone. Nobody is going to question a thing. The life insurance pays out automatically. $5 million. More than enough for the loan sharks and for us. A new life, a new country. And finally, I see the sheer horror, the absolute soul-crushing horror when her brain finally accepts what her eyes are looking at. Her face loses every single drop of color. Her lips turn chalk white. The beautiful bouquet of roses and gardenias slips right out of her hands and hits the solid marble floor with a heavy thud. The white flowers scatter all across the altar steps. "What?" she whispers in a voice that is barely even audible. "What is this?" Vincent immediately tries to snatch the cell phone right out of her hands. His voice remains smooth, but now there is a sharp edge of real desperation cutting through it. "Emily, my love, that is not what it looks like at all. Your mother is completely lying. She manipulated my phone. I have no idea how, but Sarah forcefully blocks his arm before he can even lay a finger on Emily. "Do not touch her," she says with a voice made of pure steel. "Get away from my sister right now." My brother Jack steps up from behind his large, muscular frame, positioning itself in a way that partially blocks Vincent. He does not say a single word, but his imposing presence is a highly clear threat. 30 years as a police commander taught him exactly how to intimidate a man without making a sound. Emily does not seem to notice any of this happening. She just keeps staring at the phone screen, scrolling endlessly down the conversation, reading more and more messages. Her breathing rapidly accelerates. I can see her actively hyperventilating her chest, rising and falling way too fast underneath the tight bodice of her white wedding dress. Sarah steps in, showing her own phone to the crowd. "I also have all the screenshots," she announces with firm authority, her accountant's voice presenting hard evidence at a major audit. "I photographed every single one of them. They are in my email, in my husband David's email, and in Mom's email. There is absolutely no possible manipulation here. These are text messages straight from your phone, Vincent, from your actual phone number, with the original dates and timestamps that can be easily verified by any forensic expert." Father Alexander steps closer, his face etched with profound worry. Sarah shows him her glowing screen without saying another word. The poor man reads the texts and immediately turns as pale as a ghost. He takes off his glasses with shaking hands and wipes the cold sweat right off his forehead. "Holy God," he murmurs, making the sign of the cross. This is an actual plot to..." He cannot even finish the horrific sentence. He cannot physically say the words out loud inside this grand cathedral in front of this sacred altar at an event that was supposed to be a joyous celebration of life and love. The guests in the front rows are standing up from their seats, now desperately trying to see what is happening. The murmuring grows louder and louder. I hear fragmented pieces of anxious conversations. What is going on? What is the bride reading? Why did the mother stop the wedding? Has somebody called the cops? Emily just keeps reading, and I know exactly which part she has reached when her entire body goes completely rigid. She has finally found the most explicit messages, the meticulously detailed plans. I read along right next to her, my heart breaking all over again. "I will cut the rope when we are completely alone on the mountain. She will be secured directly to me, so when the rope gets cut, she will just fall. I will stay up there acting traumatized. I will call emergency services immediately. I will cry. I will play the role of the devastated, broken husband perfectly. Nobody is going to question a thing. Rock climbing accidents happen all the time. The statistics are entirely on our side." Emily lets out a choked, awful sound. Something trapped between a heavy sob and a scream. Her legs wobble, and I grab her arm just a second before she collapses. Sarah grabs her other arm. Between the two of us, we keep our sister standing upright. "Keep reading, sweetie," I tell her with a soft but unwavering voice. "You need to see all of it. Everything, Emily." And she keeps going. Her eyes dart frantically across the screen, hot tears finally starting to stream down her cheeks, completely ruining the perfect makeup that took her 2 full hours to apply this morning at the beauty salon. She reads all about the life insurance policy for $5 million. She reads all about the forged signature. She sees the clear photo of the official life insurance document. She sees her supposed signature right down there at the bottom, and I know she instantly recognizes that it is not her handwriting. I forged it for her. My handwriting is very similar, and the document is already processed. $5 million in the event of accidental death, complete with the extreme sports clause that nobody ever checks properly. Absolutely perfect. The cell phone almost slips completely out of her trembling hands. Sarah catches it just in time. "Who is she?" Emily asks suddenly, her voice totally broken, but carrying a sharp, growing edge of pure anger. She looks up at Vincent for the very first time since she started reading the horrific texts. "Who is my love? Who is this woman writing these awful things to you?" Vincent has completely abandoned his cool composure now. I can clearly see the raw panic rising in his eyes. His perfectly tailored suit suddenly looks way too tight. There is heavy sweat glistening on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning inside the cathedral. Emily, babe, that is. It is really complicated. Your mother is taking everything totally out of context. They are just text messages, fantasies, completely meaningless conversations. I would never... Fantasies about killing me. Emily screams, and her voice violently echoes off the cold stone walls of the cathedral. Fantasies about cutting my rope on a damn mountain. Fantasies about cashing a $5 million check when I am dead. The guests are completely on their feet now. Total chaos is rapidly breaking out. Some women are openly crying. Some men are pulling out their phones, recording everything. My cousin Betty, sitting in the third row, has both hands clamped over her mouth, her eyes huge with profound shock. But Emily is not finished yet. She keeps scrolling down the phone screen, and then she finds the photos. The highly intimate pictures of Vincent with another woman. A beautiful young woman with long black hair and a perfect white smile. Emily studies the photos in absolute silence for a long, agonizing moment. Then she checks the date metadata. Her fingers tap the glass screen, zooming in, verifying the details, needing to be absolutely certain of what she is looking at. 3 days ago, she says with a totally flat voice completely devoid of any emotion. The shock is so incredibly deep that she has pushed past the tears, pushed past the blinding anger, and arrived at a place of total, freezing numbness. These pictures are from 3 days ago. She turns slowly back to Vincent. Who is she? I recognize the woman in the photographs. I had seen her once before, 2 months ago, at the formal engagement dinner we hosted at my historic house in the suburbs. Vincent had introduced her as his cousin Vanessa, who was supposedly visiting town from Chicago. I vividly remember thinking it was extremely weird how she looked at him. Way too affectionate, way too intimate for a cousin. I even mentioned it to the private investigator right at that time, right before I ended up firing him. He actually checked into it and found a Vanessa Miller on Vincent's extended family tree, a second cousin who lived in Chicago and worked as a hotel manager. What none of us knew back then was that the woman at the dinner party was not the real cousin at all. It was his lover using the borrowed name of a distant relative the family barely even knew. Sweetie, I say very softly, that is Vanessa, the woman Vincent introduced to us as his cousin 2 months ago, the one who is sitting right... My eyes rapidly scan the crowded congregation, desperately looking. Right over there, I point directly toward the 5th row where a young woman in a bright red dress is sitting. When our eyes finally meet, her face turns as white as a sheet of paper. She tries to look away, but it is way too late. Emily has already spotted her. My beautiful daughter in her elegant wedding dress, with her makeup streaked with heavy tears, starts walking directly toward her. She drags the heavy train of the dress across the cold marble floor of the cathedral. All the grace and elegance from just minutes ago have completely vanished. Now there is only raw fury and pure, unadulterated pain. Emily says, her voice ringing out with an intense ferocity I had never heard from her before. You are his mistress. You actually came to my wedding to watch me marry him, fully knowing that he was planning to murder me. The cathedral instantly explodes into loud murmurs. Some guests jump up, others cover their mouths in horror. Vincent's Aunt Mary, sitting right next to Vanessa, physically recoils from her as if she were carrying a highly contagious disease. Vanessa frantically tries to stand up to run away, but 2 of my aunts, Betty and Rose, robust women who do not get intimidated by anyone, easily block her path. They are my late husband's sisters, and they have been through more wild family fights than I can even count. They are absolutely not going to let this woman escape. You are not going anywhere, Aunt Betty says with a rock-solid voice crossing her thick arms tightly over her broad chest. You are going to sit right back down there until all of this gets completely cleared up. Vanessa desperately tries to defend herself, her voice high-pitched and shaking. "Let me go. I did not do anything. This is all a massive misunderstanding. I did not even—" But Sarah is already right there, holding up her glowing cell phone for everyone to clearly see. A misunderstanding. She reads the horrific texts out loud. "Almost there, my love. 6 months after the mountain trip, we will be free. 50-50 split, just like we agreed. The Caribbean sounds absolutely perfect. Nobody knows us down there." You wrote that, Vanessa. Or should I say, my love. Sarah keeps reading her accountant's voice clear and precise, as if she were presenting a quarterly financial report to a board of directors. Here is another one. "I love you. I cannot wait to be with you without having to hide. Just 6 more months and we will be free, rich and free." And you replied, "I miss you. I hate that you have to actually marry her, but it is necessary for the plan." The silence is completely absolute now. Every single word Sarah reads drops like a heavy bomb inside the cathedral. I can see the raw faces of the guests. Shock, deep horror, complete disbelief. An older woman who traveled from Chicago for Vincent's family is crying silently, shaking her head back and forth. Vanessa completely collapses back into the wooden pew, burying her face in her hands. "He told me it was just a plan." She sobs uncontrollably. "He told me nobody was actually going to get hurt, that it would just be the insurance money, that the life insurance companies have so much money that it would not even matter. I never thought he was really going to murder me." Emily finishes the sentence with a voice as cold as solid ice. "You never thought he was really going to murder me. You guys were just going to cash a $5 million check for my accidental death and run off to live your great romance in the Caribbean. That is exactly what you are telling me right now." Total chaos has erupted. All 200 guests are standing up. Some people are screaming, some are violently crying. I can hear someone talking on the phone with the police dispatch. My brother Jack walks up to the altar and calmly asks Sarah for the cell phone. He reads it in silence for a full minute, his expression hardening more and more with every passing second. Then he walks straight toward Vincent. He does not touch him because Jack knows exactly where the legal line is drawn, but he positions himself in a way that Vincent is completely surrounded. Other men from our family, cousins and uncles step up to join him without anyone having to ask. They do not say a single word, but the message is incredibly clear. "I think it is in your best interest to stay right here until the police arrive," Jack says, with a very calm voice, but with an edge of hardened steel that I recognize from his many years as a police commander. "If you try to leave it, it's going to make you look incredibly guilty. And believe me, buddy, you do not want to look like you are fleeing a crime scene." Vincent looks around, frantically evaluating his very limited options. He can clearly see that he is completely surrounded, that every single exit out of the cathedral is heavily blocked by angry members of our family, that there are at least 20 men standing between him and any door, and that probably 100 people are currently recording this entire moment with their cell phones. If he tries to run now, it will be fully captured on video. It will become hard evidence, and Vincent is just smart enough to know that doing so would permanently seal his guilt. He just stands there with his fists clenched tightly at his sides, his jaw locked, the entire mask of the perfect groom totally destroyed. For the very first time, I can actually see the real monster hiding behind the performance, and he is deeply terrifying. There is pure coldness in his eyes, raw calculation. There is no real remorse, there is absolutely no shame. He is just evaluating the tactical situation, desperately looking for a way out. Emily rips the delicate veil right off her head with a highly violent movement. The 10-foot veil that belonged to Grandma Hope, that had been passed down through generations, that Emily had always planned to pass down to her own daughter someday. She rips it off and throws it aggressively right into Vincent's face. The sheer fabric floats through the air in slow motion and lands directly at Vincent's feet, like a ruined symbol of everything that has just died here today. The dream, the pure love, the bright future. Everything completely turned to ashes. Sarah already has her phone to her ear, dialing the emergency number. Yes, I need to report hard evidence of a conspiracy to commit premeditated murder, she says with a crystal clear and steady voice to the 911 operator. I have complete photographic evidence, explicit text messages, highly detailed plans, and forged legal documents. We are at St. Patrick's Cathedral downtown, right in the middle of a wedding. The main suspect is currently here. I need you to send units right now, immediately. She gives our exact location. She perfectly describes Vincent. She mentions that there are over 200 witnesses, that the situation is currently under control, but that they need to dispatch officers right away. While Sarah stays on the phone with the police, Emily completely breaks down, quite literally. Her legs simply stop holding her up, and she collapses right onto the hard floor of the cathedral, her white dress spilling out all around her like a broken cloud. The horrific sound she makes, that deep, soul-tearing sob, is something I will never, ever forget as long as I live. I immediately rush over to her and wrap my arms tightly around her. Sarah finishes the 911 call and joins us a split second later. The three of us stay right there on the hard floor in front of the altar in the middle of this grand, historic cathedral, completely surrounded by 200 shocked witnesses, holding each other and sobbing while the beautiful world Emily had built in her mind completely crumbles to the ground. I am so sorry, Mom. Emily sobs uncontrollably, clinging to me with a desperate, crushing strength. I am so incredibly sorry. You were right. You were right the entire time, and I just did not listen to you. I treated you horribly. I called you terrible things, and you saved me. You saved my life. I can only hold her tight and cry right along with her. You are alive, my beautiful girl. That is the only thing that actually matters. You are alive. You are right here. You are completely safe. Sarah hugs us both tightly, her own tears finally falling in utter silence. Together, she whispers softly. Always together, just the three of us. Father Alexander walks over and places his shaking hand gently on Emily's head. My dear child, he says with a voice totally broken by deep emotion, heaven truly protected you today. God put that cell phone into the absolute right hands at the exact right moment. It is a profound miracle, a terrible, highly painful miracle, but a true miracle nonetheless. Matthew and Isabella, my sweet little grandchildren, slip away from David and come running directly toward us. They throw themselves right onto their Aunt Emily, wrapping their tiny little arms tightly around her neck. Do not cry, Auntie Em, Matthew says with his sweet little 7-year-old voice. We are right here. We love you so much. Isabella, with her 5 years of age and her infinite seriousness, wipes the hot tears right off Emily's face with her tiny hands. You are the prettiest aunt in the whole wide world, she says with total conviction, even when you are crying. And right there, sitting on the floor of this historic cathedral, completely surrounded by utter chaos, destruction, and agonizing pain, there is also deep love, fierce family love, unconditional love, the exact kind of love that actually saves lives. The loud wail of police sirens can be heard echoing outside roughly 8 minutes after Sarah's 911 call. 4 patrol cars from the Major Crimes Unit arrive with their flashing red and blue lights, the loud sound cutting sharply through the busy downtown traffic. 6 officers wearing dark navy uniforms and heavy bulletproof vests march right inside. The leader is a female detective, Detective Helen Ross, according to the shiny badge clipped to her belt. She looks to be about 40 years old, with dark hair pulled tightly back into a severe ponytail and eyes that have clearly seen way too much in her long career. Sarah immediately stands up from the floor where we were all huddled together and walks straight over to the arriving officers. Even in this moment of total catastrophic crisis, my eldest daughter maintains her rock-solid composure. She is the professional accountant, the highly analytical one, the one who can perfectly separate raw emotion from cold logic whenever it is absolutely necessary. "Detective Ross," Sarah says respectfully, extending her hand. "I am Sarah Miller. I am the one who made the 911 call. I have complete digital evidence of a conspiracy to commit premeditated murder. My sister is the intended victim." Detective Ross shakes Sarah's hand very briefly, then pulls out a small notepad. "Tell me exactly what happened here today." Sarah, with the laser precision of someone completely used to presenting complex financial reports, explains absolutely everything. How Vincent handed his cell phone over to Emily, how Emily passed it straight to me, how a highly suspicious text message popped up right on the locked screen, and how we subsequently found the fully detailed murder plot buried in his private conversations. "I have highly clear screenshots of absolutely everything," Sarah says, holding up her cell phone. "The text messages are fully backed up across 3 different email accounts. We also have the original device right here." Detective Ross takes both cell phones, carefully snapping on a pair of blue latex gloves first. She begins to read, her sharp eyes moving very rapidly across the glowing screens. After several tense minutes, she exchanges a very heavy look with her heavily armed partners. It is a look I instantly recognize. It is the look of seasoned professionals who have just found incredibly solid, real evidence of a highly serious felony. "Where is the main suspect?" she asks sharply. Jack points directly toward the altar where Vincent is heavily surrounded by a dozen furious men from our family. "Right over there. We have not laid a single finger on him. We just made absolutely sure that he could not leave the building." Another armed officer walks straight over to Vincent. "Mr. Vincent Miller, we need you to come with us down to the precinct right now to answer some questions regarding very serious evidence we've just received related to severe threats and a conspiracy to commit murder." Notice that they do not formally arrest him right there on the spot. They do not have a signed arrest warrant yet, but they are utilizing the classic police technique of inviting him to come with them to clear the air. If Vincent actually refuses, then they can easily argue that his highly suspicious behavior gives them probable cause to detain him immediately. Vincent knows this perfectly well. I can see the rapid calculation happening in his cold eyes. If he refuses, he completely confirms his own guilt in front of 200 witnesses and probably 50 cell phone videos. If he goes quietly, he still has a tiny window of opportunity to demand a lawyer and try to fabricate some kind of believable story. "This is completely ridiculous," he murmurs, but his voice lacks any real conviction. "But I will happily go with you officers to clear up this massive misunderstanding. We also need to speak with..." Detective Ross quickly checks Sarah's detailed screenshots. "Vanessa Miller. Is she currently present here?" "Right over there," I say, pointing firmly toward where Vanessa is still sitting now, weeping openly, completely surrounded by my tough aunts, who are keeping her firmly locked in place without actually touching her. 2 heavily armed officers walk right over to her. "Miss Miller, we need you to come with us down to the station as well to provide your official statement regarding these explicit text messages." Vanessa screams loudly and frantically tries to resist. "This does not have absolutely anything to do with me. I just came here to attend a wedding. I did not do anything wrong." But she finally gives in when Detective Ross very patiently explains to her that actively resisting them would instantly be considered felony obstruction of justice, and that doing so absolutely would justify an immediate formal arrest. As the armed officers slowly escort him right out of the cathedral, Emily finally stands back up. Sarah and I carefully help her to her feet. Her beautiful dress is heavily wrinkled and stained from the dirty floor. Her perfect makeup is completely ruined, but she stands up incredibly tall, staring directly at Vincent as they march him toward the massive exit doors. Vincent tries to make direct eye contact with her one last time. He tries to use that specific look he had used so many times before, the look of the deeply wounded lover of the completely misunderstood man. But Emily absolutely does not return his gaze. She turns her face directly toward me, resting her tired head heavily on my shoulder. They escort him completely out of the grand cathedral, Vincent looking impeccable in his tailored groom suit, but without handcuffs just yet. Vanessa wearing her bright red dress. The shocked guests record absolutely everything with their phones. The bright camera flashes fill up the massive space. The public scandal is going to be absolutely massive. This crazy story will be all over the evening news before the day is even over. But I do not care. None of that actually matters to me at all. My beautiful daughter is alive. I saved her. I completely destroyed her wedding day, her biggest dream, her entire idea of perfect love. But I saved her life, and I would absolutely do it 1,000 times over without ever hesitating for a single second. After the police take Victor and Vanessa away, Detective Davis stays behind to take our initial statements. We sit on the front pews of the cathedral, surrounded by family. The other guests have slowly begun to scatter in shock, speaking in hushed tones, some of them crying. "Miss Emily," Detective Davis says with a professional voice, but not without compassion, "I need you to tell me everything you know about Victor Ives. When you met him, how your relationship was, if you noticed anything unusual." Emily, still clinging to my hand, begins to speak in a monotone voice. She recounts how she met Victor 11 months ago at a finance conference at the Plaza Hotel, how he was charming, polite, and interesting, how they rushed the relationship very quickly. After 4 months, he proposed to me. Emily says, looking at the engagement ring on her finger as if it were a foreign object, "I thought it was romantic, that it was true love, that when you know, you know." Detective Davis takes notes. "Did he ever ask you for money?" "Not directly." Emily thinks aloud. "But he always had situations. His credit card would not work at restaurants. His car broke down and needed expensive repairs. His mother was sick and needed medicine. I always paid. I thought it was because he was going through a tough time that he would pay me back later. He never did." "How much did you lend him in total?" Emily does a mental calculation. "Probably $20,000, maybe more." Sarah chimes in. "My mother hired a private investigator 6 months ago. He found out that Victor had massive debts with private loan sharks, almost $300,000. He also found out that he had been married before." Detective Davis straightens up in her seat. "Married to whom?" "A woman named Lucy Miller," I answer. "The investigator found that they had divorced 5 years ago or so, the record said." "I need the name of that investigator." Detective Davis says, writing quickly. "And all the reports he gave you." I give her the name of Ryan Sanders, the investigator I hired. Detective Davis makes an immediate phone call, speaking with someone at the station about verifying the marriage records of Victor Ives. While she waits for a response, she looks deeper into Victor's cell phone. Her fingers move expertly, navigating between apps and files. Suddenly, she stops. "What did you find?" Sarah asks, leaning in to see. Detective Davis does not answer right away. She keeps reading, her expression growing more serious by the second. She finally speaks, but it is to make another call. "Captain, this is Davis. I need you to open an urgent file. We have to investigate a death from 5 years ago. Lucy Miller." "Yes, the one that was classified as a suicide." "I have reason to believe it was a homicide." "Yes, right now. Send a unit to pull the complete file." She hangs up and looks at us with a grim expression. On this phone, there are internet searches from 5 years ago that were not completely deleted. Searches on how to fake a suicide, how to push someone without leaving marks, fall angles from balconies, and police investigation timelines in domestic deaths. The silence that follows is absolute. Emily turns even paler, if that is even possible. He killed her. I whisper. "He killed Lucy and made it look like a suicide." "That is what we are going to investigate," Detective Davis says. "If this is what I think it is, Victor Ives is a serial killer who specializes in marrying women for their money and then killing them to make it look accidental." Emily throws up. She literally leans over and throws up on the marble floor of the cathedral. Sarah holds her hair back while her body convulses. I rub her back, feeling my own stomach churning. "There was someone else before me," Emily says between dry heaves. "He already did this before he already killed someone, and I was going to be next. If it had not been for that message, if it had not been because Mom was paying attention..." She cannot finish. She throws up again. Detective Davis calls for paramedics. "I need medical assistance at the main cathedral. Victim of psychological trauma. Female 27 years old in shock." The paramedics arrive 10 minutes later, check on Emily, take her vital signs, and offer her a mild sedative that she refuses. "No," she says with a firm voice despite the trembling. "I need to be awake. I need to remember everything for when I have to testify. I need to be alert." The paramedics insist on taking her to the hospital for observation, but Emily refuses. "I want to go home to my mother's house, please." Detective Davis hands us her business card. "I will contact you tomorrow for full formal statements. For now, take Emily home. Make sure she is not alone tonight." They help us walk out of the cathedral. David brings the car around. Matthew and Bella are scared. They do not fully understand what happened, but they know their Aunt Em is very sad. As Emily gets into the car, still in her wedding dress, I look back at the cathedral. Father Alex is standing at the door, still in shock. The last few guests are scattering, talking in small groups. This should have been the happiest celebration of my daughter's life. Instead, it turned into the day I saved her from her killer. I took Emily home that afternoon, still wearing her wedding dress. The white French lace dress now stained with dirt from the cathedral floor, and tears looked like a burial shroud. David drove while Sarah and I sat in the back seat with Emily between us. She stared out the window without really seeing anything, her eyes lost somewhere between shock and horror. The kids rode in the front with David unusually quiet. Matthew, with his 7-year-old wisdom, had told his little sister, "Aunt Em needs silence right now." And Bella, obediently, had nodded solemnly. When we arrived at my house in a quiet, historic neighborhood, the old brick home with an interior courtyard where I had raised my daughters, where Emily had grown up, I helped my daughter out of the car. Her legs could barely hold her up. The train of her dress dragged across the cobblestones of the driveway. "Come on, my sweetheart," I told her softly, "one step at a time." I took her straight to her old bedroom. Sarah had called ahead so that my housekeeper Mary would have everything ready. The bed was made with clean sheets and the curtains were open, letting in the golden afternoon light. The posters that Emily had left on the walls when she moved out at 23 were still there. Rock bands she loved, places she dreamed of visiting, inspirational quotes that motivated her. Emily stood in the middle of the room, still in her wedding dress, looking around as if seeing the space for the first time. "I want to take it off," she said suddenly, her voice urgent. "I want to take this dress off right now. I cannot keep wearing it." Sarah and I helped her with the hundreds of tiny buttons on the back. It took almost 20 minutes to unfasten every single one. When the dress finally dropped to the floor, Emily stepped out of it as if she were escaping a trap and kicked it away with force. "Burn it," she said. "Please, Mom, burn it. I never want to see it again." "I will, my sweet girl," I promised. "Tomorrow. But right now, you need to rest." I gave her some comfortable clothes, one of my old soft cotton pajamas. Emily put them on with mechanical movements like a doll being dressed by someone else. Then she got into bed, curled up into a fetal position, and just laid there staring at the wall. She did not eat that night. She refused the soup that Mary had so lovingly prepared. She refused the chamomile tea that Sarah offered her. She refused everything except water and only drank when I insisted. That night, Sarah and I took turns staying with her. I took the first shift sitting in a chair next to her bed, watching her in the gloom, illuminated only by a small lamp in the hallway. Around 2 in the morning, Emily began to cry. They were not loud sobs. They were silent tears streaming down her cheeks, soaking her pillow. I climbed into bed with her and hugged her from behind, just like I used to do when she was a little girl and had nightmares. "I am right here, my love," I whispered. "I am here, and I am not going to leave you." "I was going to marry him, Mom," she said, her voice breaking. "I was going to promise my life to him. I was going to have children with him. And the whole time he had already planned to kill me." "I know, baby, I know. How could I be so stupid? How did I not see the signs?" "You are not stupid," I said firmly. "He is an expert predator, Emily. This is what he does. He is good at this. He has practiced. He has perfected his act for years." "Lucy," Emily whispered, "there is a dead woman because I was not enough for him because he needed more money." "No," I interrupted her. "Lucy is dead because Victor is a murderer. Not because of you, never because of you." But Emily kept crying, and I kept holding her, and that is how we spent the first few hours after the most horrible day of our lives. The first 30 days were a living hell of silence and tears. Emily stayed at my house in her old bedroom and barely came out. Sarah stayed too, turning the guest bedroom into her temporary base, while David managed the kids back home. We took turns being with Emily 24 hours a day. We never left her alone. We were terrified of what she might do if we left her by herself. During the first week, Emily did not say a single word. She just cried, silent tears that seemed to have no end. She would lay in bed staring at the ceiling or sit by the window looking out at the yard without actually seeing anything. I tried to give her food, soup bread fruit. Sometimes she would take a bite just because I insisted so much that it was easier to give in than to keep resisting, but most of the time she just shook her head and turned back to face the wall. Sarah handled all the practical matters with her signature efficiency. She canceled the reception hall and got back whatever deposits we could. She returned the wedding gifts that had already started arriving. She called everyone on the guest list to explain what had happened, sparing Emily the pain of having to do it herself. But it was the arrival of Matthew and Bella that sparked Emily's first real reaction. It was the 4th day after the canceled wedding. The kids came to visit her after school. They walked timidly into her bedroom, Matthew holding a drawing he had made in class, and Bella carrying her favorite stuffed animal. "Aunt Em," Matthew said in his serious little voice, "I made you a drawing. It is of us being happy together." The drawing showed stick figures, him, Bella, Emily, Sarah, David, and me all holding hands under a bright yellow sun. In the corner, he had written in his childish handwriting, "I love you, Aunt Em." Emily took the drawing with shaking hands. For the first time in 4 days, something shifted in her expression. Her eyes dead and empty, since the cathedral showed a tiny spark of life. "It is beautiful, my sweetheart," she whispered her first words in days. "The most beautiful one I have ever seen." Bella climbed onto the bed without asking for permission and placed her stuffed bear on Emily's lap. "My little bear is going to take care of you, Aunt Em. He always takes care of me when I am sad, so now he will take care of you." Emily hugged Bella and then Matthew when he also climbed onto the bed. The 3 of them just stayed there hugging, and I watched them from the doorway with tears in my eyes. Those children, with their simple and unconditional love, had achieved what we could not. They made Emily remember that there was still love in the world. On the 7th day after the canceled wedding, Detective Elena Davis came to the house to take formal statements. She set up her voice recorder on the dining room table while Emily, Sarah, and I sat across from her. Emily looked terrible. She had lost at least 12 pounds, had deep, dark circles under her eyes. Her skin was pale, and her hands would not stop shaking, but she had insisted on being present for the interview. "I need to do this," she had said that morning. I need to tell my story for Lucy and for any other woman he has hurt or planned to hurt. Detective Davis started with basic questions, then dug deeper. Miss Emily, did Victor ever ask you to sign documents without reading them? Emily thought carefully. Yes, about a month ago. He said it was to add me to his workplace health insurance. He passed me some papers while we were having dinner. I was distracted talking on the phone with a client. I just signed where he pointed. Did you see what the documents said? Not entirely. I trusted him. Detective Davis nodded, taking notes. We have those documents now. It was not health insurance. It was a $1 million life insurance policy with New York Life. The signature is clearly yours in some fields, but in others. In others, he forged your signature. Emily closed her eyes. He tricked me. I signed my own death warrant without even knowing it. No, Detective Davis said firmly. You were a victim of fraud. He deceived you. That is very different. Then the detective pulled out a thick folder. We have been investigating Victor Ives intensely over the past week. What we have found is highly disturbing. She opened the folder and took out photographs. The first one showed a beautiful young woman with brown hair and a radiant smile. This is Lucy Miller. She was 26 years old when she died 5 years ago. She fell from the balcony of her 10th floor apartment on the Upper West Side. The original investigation concluded that it was a suicide. Lucy supposedly suffered from depression. She slid more documents over to us. But we have reopened the case, and we have found several inconsistencies that the original team overlooked or ignored. She pointed to a forensic report. The fall angle. A new forensic expert reviewed the photos of the body and the position where she landed. He states that the angle is inconsistent with someone jumping voluntarily. It is much more consistent with someone who was pushed. She took out more papers. Neighbors reported hearing a heated argument in Lucy's apartment approximately 30 minutes before her fall. But Victor, who was her husband at the time, said there was no fight. He claimed Lucy was calm before he stepped out to buy cigarettes. He was not there when she fell, I asked. That is what he reported. He said he left 20 minutes earlier. However, a security camera from a nearby business which no longer exists and whose videos were destroyed after 30 days could have confirmed or denied that. How convenient that no one thought to check it in time. Detective Davis continued, and here is the most important part. Lucy had a $500,000 life insurance policy. The beneficiary was Victor as her husband. He cashed out that money 6 months after her death. Emily grew pale. $500,000. He killed her for $500,000. We believe so, yes, but the money vanished quickly. Victor had enormous debts, private loan sharks, and failed business ventures. In less than a year, the $500,000 had evaporated. So he needed more, I said slowly, putting the pieces together. That is why he came after Emily. Exactly, and this time he planned to get $1 million instead of $500,000, an upgrade to his business. That word business, spoken with so much disgust, made me shiver. There is more, Detective Davis went on. She pulled out another photograph. This one showed a different woman, younger, with blonde hair and blue eyes. This is Anna Smith. She was 24 years old. She was Victor's girlfriend 7 years ago before Lucy. She drowned in an accident during a beach trip to Miami. The silence in the room was absolute. Anna. The detective continued, had a $250,000 life insurance policy. At that time, Victor was just her boyfriend, not her husband, but she had listed him as her beneficiary. He collected that money as well. 3 women, Sarah whispered. 3 women at least, that we know of so far, Detective Davis said. We are investigating to see if there are more. His pattern is clear. He meets women with money or access to money. He makes them fall in love with him. He quickly gains access to their finances or convinces them to make him the beneficiary of their insurance policies, and then he kills them, making it look like an accident. Emily stood up abruptly from the table and ran to the bathroom. We heard the sound of her retching. Sarah went after her. I stayed seated, staring at the photographs of Lucy and Anna, two young, beautiful women with their whole lives ahead of them, dead because they trusted the wrong man. "If I had not seen that text message," I said in a low voice, "Emily would be the fourth." "If you had not acted when you saw it," Detective Davis corrected, "your daughter would be the fourth. You saved her life, Susan. Never forget that." The following months were a roller coaster of emotions and legal procedures. Victor was formally indicted on 3 charges: premeditated attempted murder, of Emily first-degree murder, of Lucy Miller, and suspicion of murder of Anna Smith, although this last case had less evidence. Vanessa, his accomplice, was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. She accepted a plea deal from the prosecutor's office. She would testify against Victor in exchange for a reduced sentence. The loan sharks that Victor owed money to were also arrested. Steve Miller and Robert Stone, 2 dangerous men who operated in the shadows of New York City, also agreed to testify against Victor to reduce their own sentences. During the 2nd month after the canceled wedding, Emily finally started therapy. I found Dr. Patricia Daniels, a psychologist, specializing in trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. The sessions were twice a week at my house because Emily still could not bear the thought of going outside. Dr. Daniels would come on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I would sit outside the room during the sessions, and I could hear Emily crying through the door. Each session seemed to tear her apart, forcing her to relive the trauma to face it instead of hiding from it. "But Dr. Daniels assured me that this was necessary. She has to process the trauma," she told me. "She has to feel all the pain, the betrayal, the fear, so she can eventually heal. If she buries it, it will destroy her from the inside out." During the 3rd month, Emily started talking more, not just in therapy, but with us too. She began to analyze her relationship with Victor, looking for the red flags she had ignored. "He rushed everything so fast," she said one afternoon while we were drinking tea on the patio. It was the first time she had come out of her bedroom voluntarily in weeks. We met, and within a week, he was already saying he loved me. After a month, he was talking about marriage. At 4 months, he proposed. I thought it was passion, that it was intense love, but it was urgency. Urgency because he needed the money quickly to pay off his creditors. Sarah, who was with us, nodded. The red flags were there, he just painted them pink. "He isolated me," Emily continued. "Subtly, but he did it. He always had a reason for me not to see my friends. 'Let us spend time together, babe. You can see them later.' 'Oh, I do not really like your friends. I feel like they do not like me.' He made me feel guilty for wanting to spend time with other people." "That is classic manipulation," said Dr. Daniels, who was present for this family session. "Manipulators need to isolate you from your support system. That makes it easier to control you." "And the money," Emily added. "There were always emergencies that required cash. He never asked directly. He would just mention the problem, and I, wanting to help, would offer to pay. He made me feel generous when in reality he was using me." We worked to help Emily understand that it was not her fault, that Victor was an expert psychopath who had perfected his act over the years, that he had fooled professionals, the police, even forensic investigators. But intellectual knowledge does not soothe emotional pain. Emily still woke up with nightmares. She still had panic attacks when she heard a male voice that sounded like Victor's. She still flinched at loud noises. During the 4th month, something happened that changed everything. Detective Davis brought us news. They had found Lucy Miller's mother. Mrs. Carol Miller, 70 years old, lived in Ohio. She had spent 5 years believing her daughter had killed herself out of depression, blaming herself for not seeing the signs. "She wants to speak with you," Detective Davis said, "especially with Emily. She wants to thank the family that will finally expose the man who killed her daughter." We set up a video call. It was one of the most emotional and devastating experiences of my life. Mrs. Carroll appeared on the screen, an older woman with white hair and sad eyes. When she saw Emily, she started crying immediately. "Thank you," she said with a broken voice. "Thanks to you and your family, my Lucy will finally get justice. For 5 years, I have lived thinking my baby took her own life, that I was not enough for her, that I failed as a mother. But now I know the truth. That monster murdered her." Emily was crying too. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Carroll. I am so sorry for your loss." "No, my sweet girl," Mrs. Carroll said firmly. "You have nothing to apologize for. You are a victim too. But thanks to you, thanks to your mother saving you, that man will finally pay for what he did." They talked for an hour. 2 women, 2 generations, connected by the same monster. One who lost her daughter, another who almost lost her life. At the end of the call, Mrs. Carroll said something that stayed with me. "Your mother loves you so much that she was willing to ruin your happiest day to save you. That is the purest love that exists. Never forget that." Emily turned to look at me, tears streaming down her face. "I will never forget it, Mom. Never." The trial began 8 months after the day of the canceled wedding. It took place at the state Supreme Court in downtown New York. Sarah hired the best criminal defense attorney she could find, attorney Frank Gordon, 55 years old, with an impeccable reputation in murder cases. She spent almost $50,000 of her own savings. "That monster is going to pay," she told Emily with sheer determination. "He is going to rot in prison for what he tried to do to you, I promise you." The trial lasted 6 weeks. They were the most intense 6 weeks of our lives. We had to be present almost every single day. Emily insisted on attending every hearing. "I need to see him," she said. "I need to look him in the eye when they sentence him." The courtroom was massive with high ceilings and heavy wooden benches. The presiding judge, Judge Reynolds, was a 60-year-old man with a stern expression and a reputation for being fair but ruthless with violent criminals. Victor would arrive every day in handcuffs, dressed in an orange prison jumpsuit. He was no longer the flawless, charming man from the wedding. He had lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, and his hair was unkempt. But his eyes still had that cold, calculating stare. He always tried to make eye contact with Emily. He always tried to give her that hurt puppy look, the misunderstood lover act. But Emily never returned his gaze. She would sit between Sarah and me, holding our hands, looking straight ahead. The first week consisted of the presentation of evidence. Attorney Gordon presented the screenshots that Sarah had taken the text messages between Victor and Vanessa, the detailed plans for the repelling accident, the conversations about the insurance money, and the escape plans to South America. He presented the forged insurance policy. A handwriting expert testified that several of Emily's signatures on the document were forgeries. "These 3 signatures," the expert said, pointing at the large screen in the courtroom, "were clearly made by the same hand as the other signatures on the document, but they are not the hand of Miss Emily. There are consistent differences in the pen pressure, the angle of the letters, and the shape of the capital letters." He presented forensic analysis of Victor's cell phone. The technicians confirmed that the text messages could not have been altered or spoofed. The dates and times were verifiable through the servers of the phone company. During the second week, we testified. I recounted what happened that day, how Victor gave his phone to Emily, how Emily handed it to me, how the message popped up, and how I uncovered the entire plot. Victor's defense attorney, an unpleasant man named Attorney Vance, tried to discredit me during cross-examination. "Susan, is it true that you never approved of your daughter's relationship with my client?" "That is true," I answered honestly. "And you hired a private investigator to look into him?" "Yes." "And when you confronted your daughter with what the investigator found, she got angry with you and told you to stop interfering in her life?" "Yes." Attorney Vance smiled as if he had scored a point. So, ma'am, is it not possible that you, in your desire to separate your daughter from my client, fabricated or manipulated evidence? I stared right back at him. Mr. Vance, I said with a calm but firm voice, I did not need to fabricate anything. Your client did all the work for me. He wrote those messages. He planned the murder. He forged my daughter's signature on insurance documents. I was just lucky enough to discover it before it was too late. Sarah testified after me. With the precision of an accountant presenting a financial report, she explained exactly how she documented the evidence. I took screenshots of every relevant message, she stated. I forwarded them immediately to 3 different email addresses, mine, my husband's, and my mother's. This created a time-stamped record that cannot be retroactively altered. Then I handed the original phone over to the police without touching it further. The chain of custody is fully documented. Attorney Vance tried to imply that Sarah had somehow manipulated the text messages, but a digital forensics expert testified that doing so would have been virtually impossible in the time frame we had. Then it was Emily's turn. My daughter took the stand with her head held high. She had lost weight and had dark circles, but there was a strength in her that I had not seen in months. Attorney Gordon guided her through her testimony gently. Emily recounted how she met Victor, how he fast-tracked the relationship, how he started alienating her from her friends, how he always needed cash, and how he convinced her to sign health insurance paperwork without reading it. At any point, did you suspect he was planning to harm you? Attorney Gordon asked. Never. Emily answered, her voice cracking. I loved him. I trusted him completely. I thought we were going to build a life together, have kids grow old together. Never, not for one single second, did I imagine he was plotting to murder me. What did you feel when you read the text messages on his phone? Emily stayed silent for a long moment. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I felt like my world was ending, that everything I thought I knew was a lie, that the man I loved never actually existed. He was just a mask that a monster wore. During cross-examination, Attorney Vance tried to be aggressive, but Judge Reynolds shut him down repeatedly. Counselor, the witness, is a victim of attempted murder, the judge said sternly. Maintain a respectful tone or I will have you removed from my courtroom. The 3rd week brought the most shocking witnesses, Victor's accomplices. Vanessa testified first. She had taken a plea deal in exchange for a lighter sentence. She took the stand wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, her once flawless black hair now unstyled, wearing absolutely no makeup. She confessed to everything. How she met Victor 2 years ago, how she fell in love with him, how he told her about his scheme to get easy money. He told me he would marry a wealthy woman, Vanessa testified in a flat voice, that he would get her to sign a massive life insurance policy, and then she would have an accident. He told me no one would get hurt because insurance companies have so much money they would not even notice. Did you know he planned to kill Emily? The prosecutor asked. Vanessa hung her head. Yes, I knew. And yet you participated in the plan. Yes, her voice was barely a whisper. I was in love with him. I thought if we had the money we could be together. We could be happy. I did not think of her as a real person. I only saw her as an obstacle. I looked at Emily. She was pale but kept her composure. Vanessa went on. But now I know Emily is a real person with a family that loves her with a life, and I was going to help destroy all of that. I am sorry. I know apologizing means nothing, but I am deeply sorry. Then Steve Miller and Robert Stone, the lone sharks, took the stand. Steve, a heavy-set 45-year-old man with scars on his face, explained how Victor owed them almost $300,000. We had been patient, he said with a raspy voice, but our bosses did not want to wait anymore. We told Victor that he either paid up or there would be serious consequences. What kind of consequences? The prosecutor asked. Steve did not answer directly. The kind that makes sure people can never pay again. And what did Victor propose? He said he had a plan, that he was going to marry a woman with money, that he would get access to a huge life insurance policy. That in 6 months he would have $1 million and he would pay us a 60% cut to settle his debt. Did he tell you how he would get the insurance money? Steve hesitated. He said she would have a tragic accident. And you understood what that meant? Yeah, we knew he was planning to kill her. And you agreed to this plan? Yes. There was zero emotion in his voice. In our line of work, life and death are just numbers. We just needed our cash. The testimony of those men was bone-chilling in its sheer coldness. They talked about murdering my daughter as if it were a standard business transaction. The fourth week focused on Lucy Miller. Detective Elena Davis presented all the evidence from the reopened case, the inconsistencies at the crime scene, the neighbor testimonies about the fight, the forensic analysis of the fall angle, and Victor's internet searches on how to stage a suicide. Mrs. Carol Miller testified via video conference from Ohio. She looked fragile, leaning heavily on a cane, but her voice was unwavering. My Lucy was never depressed, she stated with absolute conviction. That man murdered my daughter and made it look like she took her own life. For 5 years, I have lived with the guilt, thinking I failed as a mother. But I did not fail. That monster fooled everyone. She talked about how Victor collected the $500,000 life insurance policy, how he vanished right after the funeral, and how he never reached out to Lucy's family ever again. He was not in mourning, Mrs. Carroll declared. He was celebrating. He had gotten away with the perfect murder. During the 5th week, the defense team presented their case. Victor finally took the stand. He walked up with that exact same charm he had used to seduce Emily. He tried to portray himself as the lovesick fiancé, the victim of a massive conspiracy. "I love Emily," he said, staring right at her. "I would never hurt her." Those text messages were pure fantasy conversations that meant absolutely nothing. Her mother always hated me, and she found a way to manipulate everything just to tear me away from the woman I love. But Attorney Gordon tore him to pieces during cross-examination. "Mr. Ives, why would you have such specific fantasies about killing your future bride?" It was a game, a tasteless joke with Vanessa. A joke that included securing a real $1 million life insurance policy. I did not get that policy. Emily did. With her signature forged in multiple fields, Victor stammered, "I did not forge anything." "And what about your computer searches on how to fake a suicide from 5 years ago, right before Lucy Miller died by falling off a balcony?" "I do not know what you are talking about." "And the fact that you cashed out $500,000 from Lucy's insurance 6 months after her death. I was her husband. It was legal." "Is it legal to murder your wife and collect her insurance payout?" "I did not murder her." For the very first time, Victor lost his composure. "She killed herself. It was not my fault." "Then why are there text messages on your phone from 2 weeks ago saying, 'Lucy was easier'? This one is smarter." "Easier. In what regard, Mr. Ives? Easier to kill?" Victor remained completely silent. He had no answer. Attorney Gordon continued demolishing him for another 2 hours. By the end, Victor stepped down from the stand, sweating and utterly defeated, his charming mask completely shattered. The 6th and final week of the trial consisted of closing arguments and the judge's deliberation. Attorney Gordon delivered a devastating closing argument, summarizing all the evidence, the text messages, the forged policy, the accomplices' testimonies, the proof of Lucy's murder, and the well-established pattern. "Your Honor," he concluded, "Victor Ives is a serial killer who specializes in marrying women for their money and then murdering them, making it look like a tragic accident. He already murdered at least one woman, Lucy Miller. He planned to murder Emily. Only her mother's intervention saved her life. This man is a danger to society, to all women. He must be locked away for the rest of his natural life." Attorney Vance tried to argue that it was all circumstantial, that the messages could be interpreted in other ways, and that there was no physical evidence of an attempted murder because it never actually took place. But his argument sounded hollow even to himself. Judge Reynolds deliberated for 2 days. When he returned to the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Victor Ives. He began, his voice booming through the dead silent room. This court finds you guilty of the first-degree murder of Lucy Miller, guilty of the premeditated attempted murder of Emily, guilty of fraud and forgery, and guilty of criminal conspiracy with Vanessa Steve Miller and Robert Stone. He paused, taking off his glasses to clean them. Then he looked directly at Victor. Your actions reveal a calculated pattern of predation. You prey on vulnerable women, seduce them, gain access to their resources, and then murder them for financial gain. You are a remorseless psychopath and a severe danger to society. Another pause. I hereby sentence you to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole for the first 25 years, 30 years for the murder of Lucy Miller, 25 years for the attempted murder of Emily to be served concurrently, and an additional 5 years for fraud and forgery to be served consecutively. The gavel struck the block. May God have mercy on your soul, because this court certainly does not. Emily collapsed into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. But this time, her tears were entirely different. They were tears of pure relief, of justice finally served, of knowing that the monster who almost ended her life would spend his remaining days rotting behind bars. Vanessa received 12 years for conspiracy. Steve and Robert were handed 10 years each. When we walked out of the courthouse that afternoon, the New York City sun was shining brightly. Emily was walking differently, standing taller, as if an enormous weight had finally been lifted off her shoulders. Mrs. Carol Miller was waiting right outside the courthouse doors. She had traveled all the way from Ohio just to be present for the sentencing. When she spotted Emily, she walked over and pulled her into a tight hug. "Thank you," she cried softly. "Thank you for bringing justice to my sweet Lucy." Both women held each other and cried together, two victims of the very same monster finally finding a shred of peace. 1 year after the day of the canceled wedding, Emily came down for breakfast carrying a thick folder full of papers. She had that exact same expression I recognized from when she was a little girl, whenever she hatched an idea that truly excited her. "Mom," she said, sitting across from me, her hands wrapped around a hot mug of coffee, "I have been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened to me, about Lucy, about Anna, about how many women are out there in relationships with men like Victor, completely unaware of the grave danger they are in." I sat back and listened as she laid out her grand plan. She wanted to found a nonprofit organization dedicated entirely to helping women trapped in manipulative or abusive relationships, not just shelters or hotlines, although we will have those too, she explained, but deep education and active prevention. I want to teach young women exactly how to spot the red flags of a predator before they get in too deep. I'm going to call it Signs of Toxic Love. She declared, her eyes shining bright. I am going to give talks at major colleges, corporate events, and local community centers. I am going to use my full story with absolutely zero shame, without hiding behind anything. Because if my nightmare can save even just one single woman from going through the same ordeal, then it was all entirely worth it. I sat there completely speechless, just staring at my beautiful daughter. This same woman who just 1 year ago was so shattered that she physically could not bring herself to get out of bed. This incredible woman who had actually considered not going on living because the agonizing pain was simply too much to bear. Now she was sitting right here in front of me, armed with a concrete plan to transform her deepest trauma into salvation for others. "Are you absolutely sure about this, my sweet girl?" I asked, reaching out to hold her hand. "It is going to be incredibly tough to relive this whole story over and over again in front of total strangers, to expose yourself so publicly." Emily nodded with absolute certainty. "I have to do this, Mom. I have to make all of this mean something. I obviously cannot change what happened to me, but I can certainly stop it from happening to other innocent women. Sarah, who had been quietly listening from the kitchen, walked straight into the dining room. "This is the single most important investment I will ever make in my life," she announced with absolute conviction. "I am going to fully fund your first 2 years of operation, the office space, the training materials, the staff, everything." Between the three of us, we carefully designed the entire program over the next few months. Emily would be the public face, the one bravely sharing her story. Sarah would expertly handle the finances and the administrative side of things. I would help coordinate all the logistics and serve as a core member of the counseling team, sharing the vital perspective of a mother who nearly lost her precious daughter. It took us a full 8 months to secure all the necessary legal permits, lock down a great office space in the downtown arts district, and hire our initial support staff. Dr. Patricia Daniels happily joined us as the lead psychological advisor. Emily's very first public speaking event took place 2.5 years after that fateful day at the altar. By that point, she had processed her trauma thoroughly enough to speak in front of a crowd without crumbling to pieces. The talk was held at the State University right inside an auditorium that could easily seat 250 people. I went to listen to her sitting proudly in the back row alongside Sarah David and the kids. Watching my brave daughter walk up onto that stage, grab the microphone and begin telling her story with zero shame, and her head held incredibly high, instantly brought tears to my eyes. "My name is Emily." She began, her voice steady. "And 2.5 years ago, I was exactly 10 minutes away from marrying a man who was actively plotting to murder me." The silence in that massive auditorium was absolute. 250 young college students, mostly young women, stared intently at my daughter. And then she spoke. She told them absolutely everything. How she first met Victor, all the glaring red flags she foolishly ignored. How her mother desperately tried to warn her, how she reacted with pure anger, and how that stubbornness nearly cost her life. "You all probably think that you are way too smart to fall for something like this," she said, looking straight into the heart of the audience. I honestly thought the same thing. I have my master's degree. I worked for a massive multinational corporation. I considered myself highly independent and strong. And yet an expert predator managed to manipulate me entirely, because that is exactly what they do. They are experts. They have practiced their sick craft for years, and their victims are never weak or foolish women. They are totally normal women who simply have the terrible misfortune of crossing paths with an absolute monster. Then she proceeded to teach them the very specific warning signs, the 10 huge red flags of toxic love. Number 1, the extreme acceleration of the relationship. Number 2, total isolation from close friends and family. Number 3, strict financial control cleverly disguised as helpful support. Number 4, intense gaslighting, actively making you doubt your own basic reality. Number 5, always playing the pathetic role of the victim. Number 6, the constant and blatant violation of personal boundaries. Number 7, endless dark secrets and daily lies. Number 8, always making you feel like you owe him something. Number 9, constant and exhausting demands for clear proof of your love. Number 10, aggressive threats whenever you actually try to walk away. At the end of her powerful talk, there was a huge line of students waiting just to speak with her. Some of them were weeping. "Your story completely opened my eyes," a young girl in her early 20s said with a trembling voice. "My boyfriend does exactly what you just described. He rushes everything. He pushes my friends away. He always needs cash. I truly thought it was just because he loved me so incredibly much. But now I clearly see that they are just sick control tactics." Emily pulled her into a warm hug. "You need to end that toxic relationship today," my daughter urged. Do not wait around to see what happens next. If you see the glaring signs, walk away immediately. Your very life might literally depend on it." The sobbing girl nodded intensely. I proudly watched dozens of remarkably similar interactions play out. My brilliant daughter was actively using her deepest, darkest pain, saving countless lives. Today is Sunday once again. I am standing in the beautiful backyard of my home in our historic neighborhood, setting the large patio table for our traditional weekly family dinner. The bright sun is slowly beginning to set, painting the evening sky in gorgeous shades of vivid orange and soft pink. The rose bushes I carefully planted 2 years ago are blooming in absolute explosions of vibrant red color. The rich, savory aroma of the homemade roast I prepared fills the crisp evening air. I can clearly hear joyful laughter coming from inside the house. Matthew and Bella, now 11 and 9 years old, are happily running through the living room playing tag. Emily is right there with them, chasing them around the furniture and making them burst into those pure, innocent belly laughs that only happy children seem to possess. Sarah arrives with David, both carrying large containers filled with fresh dessert. "Mom, I made your absolute favorite," she says, kissing me gently on the cheek. "Classic apple pie." Emily steps out into the backyard with the 2 kids basically hanging off her arms. She looks incredibly radiant. Her healthy hair shines brightly under the setting sun. Her gorgeous smile is entirely genuine, and it finally reaches all the way to her beautiful eyes. This is the exact same Emily I very nearly lost forever. The one I fiercely saved. The one who bravely turned around and saved herself right after. She walks over, sits right down next to me, and grabs my hand. "Mom, I really need to show you something." She pulls out her smartphone and shows me a high-quality video clip of her most recent keynote speech at a massive national convention. The gigantic auditorium is completely packed to the brim, thousands of eager people listening with rapt attention as she bravely shares her story. Then she scrolls down to the lengthy comment section. "Your story literally saved my life. I clearly recognized these exact same signs in my own relationship and got out in time. My own mother desperately tried to warn me, and I totally ignored her. After watching this video, I finally listened to her. I work directly on a major hotline for domestic violence victims. I literally use your speech as mandatory training material for our staff. I was only 18 years old, and my boyfriend was acting exactly like the guy you described. Thanks to you, I ended that horrible relationship today." Hundreds, thousands of incredible comments. Emily has happy tears welling up in her eyes. "Mom, just look at how many women are actively being saved today, simply because you had the ultimate courage to save me first." My proud heart feels so incredibly full that it could literally burst. "Tell me all the latest news about the organization," I eagerly ask her. Emily proudly pulls up her official statistics. In just 4 short years, Signs of Toxic Love has directly helped 450 women safely escape from highly dangerous relationships. We have given more than 300 major talks, effectively reaching over 15,000 people. We have formally trained 200 top professionals, clinical psychologists, social workers, and school teachers. We have successfully created educational material that is currently being used in 50 major universities. We operate a 24/7 crisis hotline that receives over 100 desperate calls every single month. And look at this one, she says enthusiastically, showing me an email on her screen. This is from a panicked mother whose young daughter attended one of my recent talks. Her daughter quickly recognized the toxic signs in her new boyfriend. They investigated him together and shockingly discovered that he had been married before, and his ex-wife actually had an active restraining order against him for severe violence. Thanks to my talk, her beautiful daughter is entirely safe today. Sarah happily joins us at the patio table. "Financially speaking, we are doing better than ever before," she chimes in. We have secured enough massive donations to comfortably operate for the next 5 full years, and Emily literally just received an exclusive invitation to speak at a massive international convention over in Europe. Emily nods, completely thrilled. I am also writing a full-length book, The Cell Phone That Saved a Life. I just want to reach even more women. My dear Grandma Hope, now 93 years old, slowly arrives, lovingly helped along by my older brother Jason. She sits down carefully in her absolute favorite chair and smiles warmly at me. "Susan," she says, her sweet voice trembling but remarkably firm, "you truly raised a fierce warrior. You saved your precious daughter, and now she is out there saving the whole entire world." The family dinner is absolutely perfect. It is overflowing with pure laughter, deep love, and beautiful life. As I quietly observe my amazing family sitting around this big table, I think back to that horrifying day 4 years ago. I think about that cell phone buzzing inside my purse. I think about those tense 10 minutes right before they said, "I do." I think about the totally impossible decision I was forced to make. I completely destroyed my own daughter's wedding. I ruined her absolutely perfect day. I made her cry hysterically in front of 200 people. I shattered all of her dreams in one single, brutal moment. And I would absolutely do it all over again without a second thought, without a single doubt, because that is the sheer power of a mother's love. A love that fiercely saves, even if it has to violently destroy first. A love that fiercely protects, even when your child hates you for it. A love that never, ever gives up. Emily walks right over and wraps me in a tight hug. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for having the sheer courage to ruin my wedding. Thank you for trusting your gut instinct when I was screaming that you were crazy. Thank you for being strong enough to do the hardest thing imaginable." Heavy tears stream down my face as I hug her right back. I would gladly do it 1,000 times over without hesitating for a single second. Sarah walks over and joins the family hug. "Together, we are entirely invincible," she whispers. "The 3 of us always and forever." Matthew and Bella sprint toward us and wrap their little arms right around our legs. "Grandma, Mom, Aunt Em, it is time to eat." And right there, standing in my own backyard, completely surrounded by the people I love the most in this entire world, I feel an incredibly deep sense of gratitude. Profound gratitude for that cell phone vibrating. Endless gratitude for having trusted my motherly instinct. Pure gratitude for Sarah, who was right there as my faithful witness. Absolute gratitude because my sweet Emily survived that nightmare and blossomed into this truly incredible woman who now actively saves innocent lives. The bright sun finally sets completely over New York City, painting the wide evening sky in brilliant shades of dark purple and shimmering gold. The soft patio lights turn on automatically. The rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee beautifully mixes with the sweet scent of the night-blooming flowers. And in this perfectly serene moment, surrounded by nothing but pure love, vibrant life, and endless hope, I know with absolute certainty that every single second of it was entirely worth it. Every single tear shed, every long, sleepless night, every painful moment of crippling doubt, the sheer horror of that fateful day at the altar, the unbearable agony of watching my daughter break down, all of it, absolutely all of it, because waiting on the other side of that living hell was exactly this beautiful life, this wonderful family, this profound love, this incredible purpose. And just like that, a family that very nearly shattered into a million pieces grew back significantly stronger than ever before. Because true love does not just save lives, it entirely transforms them.